It's never a dull moment in these gaming streets. You see, I had a totally different video for you guys today. However, I keep hearing about this Phil Spencer interview with Polygon. And I keep seeing the PlayStation community, the ponies, they are happy because they would have heard something in this interview that would have gotten their ears perked up. So I know these ponies sometimes misinterpret things because of their pony thinking. So let's dissect this interview. Let's really see what Phil Spencer told Polygon, and we will examine what is the good news, what is the bad news, and what is the in-between news. So at this point in time, guys, buckle up. We are going to play the entire Polygon interview, and we are going to discuss it in detail. So you know what? Let's talk about it.
This is a sickness!
Let's get it. Before we start the video, don't forget to show your support for the Let's Get It podcast. Hit the subscribe button, the notification bell, and all that jazz. There's a lot to talk about today, so let's get right into the video. So here we have Phil Spencer. He had a sit down here with Polygon, and he really did reveal what is the Xbox plans going forward. So let's listen very carefully and let's clear up some things that the Sony fans are trying to push, that certain persons are trying to push. So let's listen carefully and we'll discuss it. Let's begin the audio.
Phil Spencer on what the hell is happening in the games industry and why exclusives have become a risky business. The math on making a game has definitely changed, said Phil Spencer, CEO of gaming at Microsoft. Polygon spoke with Spencer during the annual Game Developers Conference, and though the conversation ranged from the possibility of a handheld console to the trouble with closed platforms, one theme was inescapable: what the hell is going on with the games industry? And how will video game makers and publishers, Xbox included, get out of it?
So notice why they were having this interview. Phil Spencer sat down with the reporter from Polygon to discuss the state of the industry. And if anyone is saying that it's only Xbox who is in a state in the industry, then they have not been paying attention. Because as you can see clearly here, there is something wrong with the industry. We are seeing massive layoff in all gaming companies, including Sony, including Nintendo, including most of the third-party developers. We are seeing that games are too much. Games are too much to make. We are seeing that clear here, even in the Insomniac leaks. Look how much money to make a brand new game. That is why we are seeing some of the companies switching to making remasters, because it's cheaper and the return is more. So there is something wrong in the industry. It's very clear, as you can see with all these evidence here.
Spencer's views point to a collision of rising budgets, diversifying business models, and the exceptional financial risk now required to meet the audience expectations of a AAA release. He specifically pointed to the astronomical budgets of big-budget games, which have created a knot of problems that has been a challenge to disentangle. And for Spencer, the path forward is to abandon assumptions about exclusivity and attract new customers who have cooled on the console experience.
So yes, there is a huge risk while making a AAA game. If this game does not do well with the public, if the game does not sell well. So when developers make games like this, there is a huge risk that they are taking. It could even mean that if their game don't do well, their studio could shut down. Who could remember Forspoken?
Did I just do that?
Well, definitely with my assistance.
I did not just do that.
We did.
I just moved with my mind.
Perhaps our connection has somehow awoken some abilities.
I just moved with my mind.
I just keep hearing I.
I just moved it with my freaking mind!
Yes, that was an actual game. And that studio closed down when it did not sell well. Do you all remember Golem? Yes, that studio too closed down because of the game that they made. So now in the gaming industry, if it is you make a game and it does not sell well, your studio, has a possibility of closing down. That's very clear, because of what is going on now in the industry. Sony alone would have closed 4 studios in 4 years. And then he said that, seeing that persons would have cooled off out of console, now is the time to abandon console exclusivity. Now, here's where I disagree. I don't believe that Microsoft should abandon console exclusivity, simply because there are different ways you can, get new gamers. Yes, I still believe that Microsoft would have a hybrid, meaning that they would port certain games over to other consoles, as they are the biggest publishers right now in the gaming industry. They would have already been porting different games to other platforms like Minecraft, Ori, Call of Duty, the Elder Scrolls. So all these games were games that Microsoft was already, sharing with other platforms. But going forward, I still believe that they would keep some games exclusive to their platform and share more like the multi-plat games as a service for multi-platforms. But we'll have to wait and see on what they do.
But first, for context, Spencer talked about how things used to work when budgeting and greenlighting a video game. The Microsoft exec has been producing games for long enough that he can remember when the financials were relatively straightforward. A publisher could set a sales goal, say, 800,000 units, set an earnout goal, how much money they want to make, and set the price of the game, usually $59.99. From there, a video games publisher and/or studio could set a budget. However, the financial calculus has changed. In 2024, most games are sold across multiple storefronts, often steeply discounted mere weeks after release or included as part of subscription services on launch day. Plus, the games themselves take many years to create with the help of hundreds, if not thousands, of team members, sometimes spread across the world. All of this adds up, and as Spencer says, it can cost $300 million to build a video game. Spencer explained how this cost forces 3 substantial problems, one for all big-budget games, one unique to console exclusives, and one that spans the entire industry. 1. The cost really reduces the risk that publishers are willing to take. Where previous games needed to sell a few 100,000 units to justify their cost, new games may need to sell many millions of units. If you're a publisher, you know that's a pretty big number in a world that already has a lot of video games coming, said Spencer. How are you going to establish this thing? Am I willing to take the red on new IP, on a new kind of game, when the earnout risk is that high? I think it impinges on the creativity of this industry, which I don't love. Creativity is like the cornerstone of what we should be about in gaming.
So there are 2 things, or a couple of things that he said there that are very interesting. For one, video games are sold on multiple storefronts, and in order to entice persons to buy said video game, sometimes the video game itself is marked down after a couple of weeks. In addition to that, we are seeing that it takes not hundreds but thousands of game developers all over the world to maybe achieve the making of one particular game. So it's very hard to break even when it comes to these modern games. Now, there is a lesson to be learned when it comes to Palworld or Helldivers or so forth. Those 2 games are wildly successful, and we know that the team to make those games was not a big team, and it didn't cost all that amount of money to make those games. But guess what? It yielded a lot of profits. So the industry is no doubt looking at that, looking at how games that are not AAA that are scoring big. So I predict that soon there will be plenty more games like that, because the money is there with games just like Helldivers 2 and Palworld. What do you think?
2. This cost is particularly prohibitive for exclusives that can only reach so many players. As Spencer explained in our conversation about the perils of exclusivity and walled garden consoles, these games need to make additional money to justify the console maker subsidizing the cost of the console. As Spencer explained, the case for exclusivity gets pressured as the cost of the game goes up. 3. According to Spencer, the console market has not grown in the past year. Though Xbox, PlayStation, and Nintendo Switch consoles continue to sell, Spencer notes that many console gamers are simply upgrading, or, to put it another way, they're not new to the market and won't contribute to growth. And without new customers, everybody else's customer is your success state, said Spencer. You can't succeed unless you draw in customers from other publishers and other platforms. And because you're not finding new customers with the games that you're building, everybody's kind of fighting over the same size pie.
So is it true? Is it true that the gaming industry is not growing? Well, look at the evidence here. Christopher Dring would have posted this up a while ago, and this is what he said. The PlayStation 2 and Xbox generation was only 180 million. The PlayStation 3 and the Xbox 360 generation is only 170 million. And the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One generation was, again, only 180 million. So all of these are evidence that the gaming industry has not grown for some time now. That means that the big three is fighting for the same customers, and because of that, that will make competition very stiff. It will also make persons who are not looking at the numbers think that the gaming industry is growing. But really and truly, PlayStation is selling the same amount of consoles that they would have sold previously. We even had a new stat showing that PlayStation is not even selling as fast as the PlayStation 4. The PlayStation 5 is not selling as fast as the PlayStation 4.
These problems have had a very real, substantial, and immediate human cost. The industry has seen consistent and mounting layoffs, including a particularly rough start to this year. Shortly after Microsoft's acquisition of Activision Blizzard King, the company announced it would be laying off 1,900 workers from its gaming division. Polygon asked Spencer if the ABK layoffs were part of this wider trend, or if there was something unique about the layoffs as they pertain to the current Xbox business. It's a little bit of both, said Spencer. But I'll say the thing that has me most concerned for the industry is the lack of growth. And when you have an industry that is projected to be smaller next year in terms of players and dollars, and you get a lot of publicly traded companies that are in the industry that have to show their investors growth, because why else does somebody own a share of someone's stock if it's not going to grow? The side of the business that then gets scrutinized is the cost side. Because if you're not going to grow the revenue side, then the cost side becomes challenged. We're a business, I've said over and over.
Even Nintendo, who has been number one in selling the Switch for some time now, recently had layoffs, as we saw earlier. Sony, who was boasting that they are the number one, they too had a number of layoffs, throughout their studios. So this is very much concerning. All of these layoffs happening, no growth in the industry. So something have to give. One thing I'll give Phil Spencer credit for is that at least he and his team is recognizing that the gaming industry as a whole needs help. It needs something fresh. It needs something to make this industry grow. And because of that, that is why we are seeing Microsoft doing something a little different when it comes to their strategy in video gaming.
I don't get any luxury of not having to run a profitable growing business inside of Microsoft. And we are that today. But just across the industry, you mentioned it, and in sitting here at GDC, I reflect on friends of mine in the industry that have been displaced and lost their jobs, and how just, I don't want this industry to be a place where people can't, with confidence, build a career. So that's why I keep pivoting back to, how does this industry get back to growth? But to your question, versus Xbox or any of the teams that are out there, it is really an outcome of an industry that's not growing. It can grow and it will grow again. But you see this time right now, and the implications have human impact. And we should all reflect on that and think about it. As we talked through Microsoft's plans for growth, both with the company and the wider game space, Spencer continually returned to the idea of exclusivity.
So here we have Phil Spencer talking about some of his friends and some of his colleagues who would have lost their jobs in the previous layoffs, and he's saying that he wants persons not to think that they can't make gaming a career, he wants the industry to grow. That's fair and fine enough. But listen carefully here. This is the point that the ponies are trying to say. This is it. Listen up.
This year, Xbox has ported 4 exclusives to other consoles, like Nintendo Switch and PlayStation 5. For Spencer, this is a way to bring more players and sales to old games, but it's also a way to break some old industry habits, like exclusivity, that may be responsible for the stagnation of the console market. Consider 2 years of lack of growth in the gaming industry at the top line. You start to ask yourself, well, I don't want to grow at the expense of the industry, I want to grow as part of the industry, and what do we need to do as an industry to get back on the growth path?
So Phil Spencer is directly addressing the 4 games, the 4 exclusive games that he would have port to other platforms, PlayStation and Nintendo, namely. He also said that here, these are 4 old games, and the reason for doing that is to drive more revenue on these games and to also increase the player base. Right, so listen on.
I will say, every decision we make today and tomorrow is for the better of Xbox, said Spencer. I know sometimes things get weaponized, that there's some evil in the background that's making us do things. Phil hates exclusives, and that's why we're like PlayStation and Switch now. Every decision we make is to make Xbox stronger in the long run. It doesn't mean everyone's going to agree with every decision we make. But it is fundamental for how we make decisions. For Spencer, moving toward the future is about walking, in some part, away from exclusivity.
So Phil does acknowledge that the PlayStation community would weaponize everything that he say for a talking point, for bragging rights and so forth. He recognized that, right? But what he's saying is that, what they do is for the betterment of Xbox. For example, he believes that the future of Xbox is walking away in some part, listen to that, in some part away from exclusivity. Now, here is what I understand by that. Look at this chart here. Now, this chart is a chart that was recently shown in the FTC appeal when they tried to appeal the Activision Blizzard merger. And this is what Microsoft shown, that this is what they are doing going forward. So you see games like Psychonauts and Fallout 76. That is what they call a niche audience, a small community. Games like that have low value of exclusivity. So those games like that, will be going out to multiple platforms. Look at what is in green. Games like Starfield, Redfall, that have a high value of exclusivity. And games like Minecraft, games like Call of Duty, that also have a mass market audience, and it have a massive online communities and so forth. So again, that would be multi-platform, because that could yield great results for Microsoft. So this is Microsoft model going forward, and this is exactly what Phil Spencer is talking about. There are some games going forward that will not be exclusive to Xbox because it's either have high market appeal, there are things that are niche that could go to these other platforms and it would help the game, right? But there are games like Starfield, like Redfall, like Indiana Jones. Those type of games would be exclusive because of this model that we are seeing here. Now, if you ask me if things could change, yes, things could change. But as we know for now, this is the model that Microsoft is using, and this is what Phil Spencer is talking about. So let me hear what you think about everything that was said today. This was a very interesting article. You guys should go and read about it. Now, of course, the PlayStation community is blowing this out of proportion, but it's very clear that there will still continue to be some exclusive games on the Xbox platform. Do not fall into the hype and to the propaganda. So let me know what you think about it in the comment sections below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos. I'll see you guys in the next one. Later.